And then finally, let's talk about some network attacks. I tried to just come up with ones off the top of my head that I thought you needed to be familiar with. One we've already talked about a little bit is bluejacking and blue snarfing. This could be a type of network attack. We talked about this when we were talking about the wireless. So since Bluetooth is becoming pretty popular, right? We have it everywhere like we talked about. In our cars now where we can sync up our phones. I've got a wireless speaker, as a matter of fact, that I can sit out there and Bluetooth from my phone and send the radio signals over, or the music that I'm playing, right? And it comes out this speaker. We've got the earpieces, the headphones, the keyboards. I mean, Bluetooth is everywhere nowadays. There are these attacks that we need to be familiar with. Remember, we talked about bluejacking. That's getting or sending, whichever side of the coin you're on there, those unsolicited messages, right? So I'm sending those to Bluetooth-enabled devices. And then we have blue snarfing, where I'm actually trying to get information off of your phone, right? It may even get to the point where I could compromise your phone so much I could take over your phone. And now I could clone your information, clone your phone, and make phone calls. And they look like they're coming from you, text messages. We see those on the crime shows all the time, right? And movies. Oh, they cloned my cell phone. I didn't send that text message. I'm not guilty. Could be because of something like this. A Fraggle attack. This is a variant of a Smurf attack. And we're going to talk about Smurf attacks here in just a second. But this uses UDP echo packets rather than ICMP packets. Now, Cisco routers, to stop this, can be configured to disable the TCP and UDP services that are most commonly used in these type of Fraggle attacks. So not super popular, but I wanted you to be aware of it. Session hijacking. This is IP spoofing, but I'm altering the TCP packet so it looks like it's coming from a known trusted source. That would give me access to the network. So if, let's say I'm running a man-in-the-middle attack, or I compromised your network, I'm on your network somehow, I can actually set up a protocol analyzer, a sniffer, a packet sniffer, and start looking at information that's coming across. And I can see session IDs if they're unencrypted. After a while, I may be able to get a pattern. And I may be able to guess that pattern on how that session ID was created. And once I do, or maybe I'm stealing your cookies. That's another popular way of doing it, actually. I could steal your cookies, and now I have that cookie. I can use that session and log on to the server. Now the server is going to start communicating with me because I'm passing the session ID across that that the server told the end user, you, to use. So he's not going to know any different. That server's not going to care. So, oh, hey, there you are. Welcome back. Now, if you log out and the session times out, then I can't do any session hijacking. But I can do that as long as that data communication is live, that session is live. So hijacking is taking over a live connection. Spoofing is doing IP spoofing, right? Where I'm pretending to be somebody else. All right. So don't get those two confused there. A SYN flood, pretty popular type of denial of service attack. So in a SYN flood, TCP packets are going to be spoofed again with a different source address requesting a connection. So I'm going to send you, remember we talked about that three-way handshake, right? I'm going to try to synchronize with you. So I'm going to send you a bunch of SYN packets to the target network or the target machine. So what are you supposed to do following TCP rules? That's right, you're going to send me a SYN-ACK, right? I'm saying, hi, I'm Dave. You're going to reply and say, nice to meet you. You're going to acknowledge me and tell me who you are. You're trying to synchronize back with me. But since it's spoofed, right, I send it, but I'm spoofing somebody else's address. When you send the SYN-ACK back, it's going to go to somebody else over here. They don't know who that is, even if that IP address exists. The router may get it and say, I don't know what this is. So you're never going to get that final acknowledgement, right? This leaves a bunch of half-open connections. because we didn't get that final acknowledgement back. We didn't do the three-way, right? Only did one and then two. You didn't get that final one. So it doesn't complete that communication session. So what you will do, you as the target, you're going to sit there and wait. You're going to sit there and wait. But while you're sitting there and waiting for that acknowledgement, what do you think I'm going to do as the attacker? I'm going to send you another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I'm going to try to send thousands of these within about 30 seconds or so. Because remember, you only have so many ports open. You only have so many doors you can communicate with me on. Eventually, I could overwhelm that system. And I could bring it down as far as giving services out to other people. Because I'm going to clog up the system. I'm denying you service. Now, SYN floods, they can be countered a couple different ways. All right, I know I paint the doom and gloom picture, right, about bringing you down, but we do have ways of mitigating these floods. Now, Cisco routers, they can use a couple different features, like TCP intercept, which looks for these half-open connections, and it proxies those connections. We can also use something called a committed access rate. And that's, when you think about that, you need to think about bandwidth limitations. So that limits the bandwidth available to certain types of traffic. So if I see a bunch of this traffic coming in, remember we talked about the throttling down? This is kind of what that is. I could say, okay, this only gets this. Instead of throttling it, if I see something pulling it down, I say this is all it gets. So that is that committed access rate, and that should slow down that attack because you have to do it in a certain amount of time. It's not like I can just sit there and do it all day long and eventually it's going to fill up, because those will time out on the target end. So I have to do it within about 30 seconds or I'm going to be unsuccessful. So if with a committed access rate, if I can't push the data fast enough, then the attack's not going to be any good. So we've mitigated that attack. Checkpoint also has a firewall out there that has a feature known as SYN Defender. And it functions kind of the same way as the intercept feature does on Cisco's router. Again, it proxies out those half-open connections. So it's acting on its behalf. Now, other defenses that we can have is like changing the default maximum number of half-open connections we have. We can also reduce the timeout period on those network systems. Remember I said about 30 seconds. What if you lowered that to 15 or 20 seconds? That's just making you a little bit more secure, right? Now, you may also get some complaints if you lower that timeout period a little too low, because if there's any latency or network issues, it's going to kick people out by the time that network tries to decide what it's going to do. So then they may have to try to log in again, or may have to start the data communication again. A teardrop attack, another type of network attack. This causes the target system to get confused. But what we're doing is adjusting the length and the fragmentation offset fields of sequential IP packets. We're going in and modifying that information so it looks like it's confused. Like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be this length. I'm not ready for this yet. And the target end will actually become confused about this. We could have a UDP flood, kind of like a SYN flood. This is another type of denial of service, but I'm sending a huge number of UDP packets to the target. And what I'm trying to do is consume all that bandwidth, right? You only have so much. And if I can flood you with tons of information, I could take up that whole pipe and legitimate traffic can't get through. Now, this can be generally countered by dropping unnecessary UDP packets right at the router, right at the perimeter, so it can't even get to our server system or get to that workstation that we're trying to attack. Now, if the attack uses a required UDP port, though, say 53 for DNS, that countermeasure is not going to work because it is legitimate traffic, right? DNS works off TCP and UDP, but on UDP, that's where it's giving information to clients. So if I can force it to use port 53, first off, I'm probably going to get through the firewall. Then it looks like legitimate traffic because of the port. So those countermeasures may not work. An ICMP flood. This is sending a large amount of those ICMP packets. I'm sending this to the network. Again, I'm trying to consume bandwidth, all the available resources. And by the way, on these ICMP floods and all these floods we're talking about, I'm not doing it by myself. All right, I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but I'm not going to get my laptop and just sit there and say, ha ha ha, I'm coming after you. That's not going to work. I can't send the information faster than you can process it on a one-to-one basis. And like I said, I got a pretty powerful computer and laptop. But you may have a very powerful computer or laptop. You may even have a more powerful system that can handle all kind of traffic. So what I'm going to do with these type of floods attack, these network attacks, is have something called a botnet, right? I'm going to set up a CNC computer, a command and control center. And I'm going to start compromising hundreds, if not thousands of other computers in the state and the country around the world to work on my behalf. I'm going to infect them with some type of malware, probably a Trojan, so they'll tie back and I have them under my control. So what I can do then is have thousands of computers send you this information, and now I'm more likely to be successful on like these SYN floods or an ICMP flood and things like that, because it's not coming from one computer, but it's coming from thousands of computers. And once somebody hits you all at one time like that, it will be hard for any server system to keep up with all that traffic and all those requests. Now, a Smurf attack. I told you we were going to talk about a Smurf attack. This is a variation of the ICMP flood attack. And this one's actually kind of neat. I remember learning about this back in the day. But a Smurf attack, what happens is an ICMP echo request packets, they're sent to the broadcast address of the target network, but they're using a spoofed IP address host on the target network. So the target transmits the ICMP echo request to all the hosts on the network. He says, blast it out to everybody, right? But if I'm spoofing his address, what are all these people out here going to reply to now? The target, right? I'm not directly attacking that target, and I don't have a botnet set up. But if I send out a crafted packet and I spoof your IP address, when I ping everybody out there, I'm hoping for a reply, right? That's what the ICMP is. Echo request, echo reply. So that echo reply is going to go back to the other person. Again, we're trying to take up the bandwidth, the resources on whatever target machine. Now, countermeasures against this one, usually dropping ICMP packets at the router, because you really shouldn't have ICMP packets coming in outside of your network. There's not really a legitimate reason for that. I've talked to network admins and system admins, and they're like, well, I need it because I need to test my systems. I need to be able to ping my systems and see if they're up, see if everything is okay. And okay, legit argument, I suppose, but why not use a more secure method like tunneling into the network and then testing your equipment? That way you don't have this vulnerability introduced into your network, right? So everybody does things the same way, different ways, same concept, same result, I should say, but they do them different ways, right? So that takes care of domain 4, all right? Pretty big domain there as well. What we talked about was applying secure design principles to network architecture. We looked at the network components and trying to secure those guys down. We talked about secure communication channels. And finally, we wrapped it up with networks attacks and what they were, what they look like, and some ways that we could prevent or mitigate those attacks against our network.